Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unravel the powerful forces that shape the choices we make, all through an absolutely remarkable true story, one that connects a notorious mob lawyer with a celebrated national hero.
Our story starts with this poem. Now picture this, a lonely Chicago street. A man has just been gunned down, and in his pocket, they find these words folded up. So who was this man, and what on earth led him to that fatal moment?
Well, that man was known as Easy Eddie. And he wasn't just anybody. He was the brilliant personal lawyer for one of the most infamous gangsters in American history, Al Capone.
You have to understand, Eddie's legal wizardry brought him immense wealth and power. We're talking about a life of pure luxury. He had a massive estate that took up an entire city block, complete with live-in staff, pretty much every convenience you could imagine. He was living the absolute high life of the Chicago mob.
But in the middle of all this crime and luxury, Eddie had one single thing that truly motivated him: his son. He gave the boy everything, the best clothes, the best schools, you name it. But he also tried to teach him right from wrong, a moral compass that, let's be honest, he himself seemed to be ignoring. And that created a huge problem.
Because with all that power, with all that money, Eddie started to realize there were two really crucial things he could never pass on to the boy he loved more than anything: a good name and a good example.
So he made an impossible choice. He decided to go to the authorities and tell them the truth about Al Capone and the mob. He knew, for sure, that it was a death sentence, but he was determined to try and clean up his tarnished name, to give his son a completely different kind of legacy.
Now, to really get why a man like Eddie would make a choice like that, we need to zoom out a bit. We need to understand the fundamental beliefs that guide all of us. We have to talk about human values.
So what does that really mean? Well, think of it this way. Values are our internal compass. They're what we use to decide what's right, what's wrong, and what is truly important in our lives. They are the very core of who we are.
But, it's not quite that simple, because not all values are the same. In fact, it's the conflict between different kinds of values that's at the very heart of Easy Eddie's story, and, in a lot of ways, our own stories too.
Okay, so on one hand, you have what are called extrinsic values. The easiest way to think about these is as tools. Things like money, or power, or status. They aren't valuable in and of themselves. They're valuable because of what they can get you. And then, on the other hand, you have intrinsic values. Now these are the end game. We chase things like goodness, or truth, or having a good name, not to get something else, but because they are worthwhile all on their own. They are the destination. And this right here is where you can see Eddie's internal war laid out perfectly. On one side, you have all the extrinsic rewards of his life, the wealth, the mansion, the power. But on the other side were the intrinsic values he desperately wanted for his son: a good name, a good example, integrity. And it turns out, psychologists have actually mapped this kind of conflict. This model here from Shalom Schwartz is a great visualization. It shows how our core values often pull us in opposite directions. So pursuing things like power and achievement over here can be in direct conflict with values like caring for others and acting with integrity over there. So Eddie's decision was a textbook battle between these opposing forces. He was literally choosing between self-enhancement, his own power, his own success, and self-transcendence, which is all about concern for the well-being of others. He chose to transcend his own self-interest, his own life, for the sake of his son's future. Okay, so let's get back to the story, because the gift that Eddie gave his son didn't just end on that Chicago street. No way. It created a ripple effect, one that would go on to shape American history. This is Lieutenant Commander Butch O'Hare, a fighter pilot in the South Pacific during World War II. During one mission, he realized his fuel tank hadn't been filled properly, and he was ordered to return to his carrier. But on the way back, he spotted a whole squadron of Japanese bombers heading straight for the defenseless American fleet. He was completely alone, and he just dove right in, guns blazing, and single-handedly saved the entire fleet from destruction. For this unbelievable act of bravery, Butch was awarded the Medal of Honor. Tragically, about a year later, he was killed in action. But his legacy of courage and pure self-sacrifice is now immortalized, honored by the millions and millions of travelers who pass through Chicago's O'Hare Airport every single year. So, what do these two stories, a mob lawyer and a war hero, have to do with each other? Well, here it is, the stunning connection. The national hero, Butch O'Hare, was the son of the mob lawyer, Easy Eddie. The father gave his life to give his son a good name, and the son lived up to that name in the most heroic way imaginable. This incredible story about a father and a son, it's not just some piece of history. It's really a mirror for the choices and the value conflicts that every single one of us faces in our own lives.
So that leaves us with a pretty big question, right? How do we find our own true north? How can we actually identify the core values that should be guiding our own decisions? Well, the answer starts with a process of looking inward.
Here's a pretty cool tool that can help with that. It's called the Johari window. It's just a simple way to think about our own self-awareness. It breaks your personality into 4 parts. The open area is what you and others both know about you. The hidden area is what you know but keep from others. The blind spot is what others see in you but you don't see in yourself. And finally, the unknown. By really exploring these areas, especially our blind spots, we can get a whole lot closer to understanding our true core values.
So what this all really boils down to is that self-exploration is the absolutely essential first step. It's about taking the time to discover what you truly value, your intrinsic goals, and then making the conscious choice to align up your actions with those beliefs.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Easy Eddie knew his clock was about to stop, and in that moment, he chose his values. This incredible story leaves all of us with a question that only we can answer. What values will guide your time?